Welcome to Athens City Council. This evening, we will be meeting in council committees. The meeting will be called to order by the City Council President, who will then pass discussion over to a respective committee. The chair of the committee will introduce the discussion topics and provide an overview of the issues at hand. If needed, members of the administration will offer brief statements to provide further context. We will then welcome input from the community. Any citizens who wish to speak will be asked to state their name and address, both verbally and on the sign and sheet located at the podium. Individuals will be given one opportunity to share their thoughts, and the committee chair will have the authority to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Once all citizens have had the opportunity to speak within the 15-minute time period allotted for total public participation on each topic, the public comment portion will be closed. Council committee members will then continue their deliberations. There may be additional questions directed to the administration during this time. When the discussion on the topic concludes, the chair will indicate whether legislation will be introduced at the next regular session of council and move on to the next item on the agenda or adjourn the committee if their work is complete. The next committee chair will then call their committee to order, proceeding in the same manner as before. Once all committees have adjourned, City Council will conclude for the evening.
Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, October 28th, 2024, 7 p.m. and we are in committees this evening. First committee on the agenda is Committee of the Whole. We have one item, Credit Card Compliance Officer appointment, and I'd like to introduce Member Thomas to introduce that item.
Just for the brief overview, this is a credit card compliance officer whose duties are just checking in on the city's credit card numbers, the accounts, the expiration dates, how many are issued, how many are in what names, all the information that goes along with our credit cards within the city. And that would be done at least quarterly, unless the auditor would or treasurer would ask for more. Yeah, it's a ORC rule is to have one, and that person nominated for this would be Jason Schroer. The bios are in our emails, and I can say that I have known Mr. Schroer for just shy of 30 years now, and I can very confidently say that when it comes to attention to detail, I really cannot think of a more exemplary person to fill this role. Detail is definitely his favorite thing, and I am happy to answer any questions that I can. Yeah.
Is that JT?
Yeah.
Okay, I've always known him as JT.
I don't call him Jason or Mr. Schroer very often myself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does Mr. Schroer work in the auditor's office?
No, this is a non-city role. He works at Ohio University in culinary services. And he is an OU grad and has been here since the 90s with us.
Okay.
Anything else?
Okay, is there anybody from the city administration who'd like to speak to this? Elected officials? Yes, auditor?
I can say a little bit. It's also a requirement that the person who does our compliance checks quarterly does not have a city credit card and have access to one to use either. And yeah, the last person we had was an employee at Hocking Valley Bank. So we try to get people outside the city. It's not a requirement that they be outside the city, but it's probably better.
Thank you. We're a little off in our, no, I think we're pretty good. Public, it's your turn if you'd like to speak to this issue. Anyone like to come forward, speak to the appointment of Mr. Schroer? Seeing none, it's now council. Any final thoughts on this recommendation for appointment? Seeing none, we will move on to the next committee. The next committee is the Planning and Development Committee, chaired by Member Swank, joined by Member Thomas, Member Spielness, and Member Wood.
We just have one item on the Planning and Development Committee meeting today. I'm going to read it, give a little background information, and we'll open it up to the public for comment. Essentially, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, effective January 1st, 2025, Athens City Code, Title I, General Provisions, Chapter 1.03, Code Fees Established, Section 7.05.22, is hereby amended to read as follows. Accessory structures and accessory energy systems. Permit $100 plus $1.50 per $1,000 of improvement or portion thereof. Principal renewal energy systems. Permit fees. $150 for roof-mounted residential solar. So what is this all about? You'll indulge me. This is how Director Stone described this. This is fairly succinct, and I think will answer a lot of questions. The current existing zoning code permit fee for structure improvements is $100 plus $150 per 1,000 of improvement. This is for roof-mounted solar panels, attached garages, and primary structure additions, and for accessory structures. The current existing zoning code permit fee as accessory structures is $100, which covers ground-mounted solar, sheds, pool houses, detached garages, and swimming pools, without any base or any fee based on the cost of improvement. Some of the high-end swimming pools and pool houses that cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars were only being charged a $100 fee. So a $100,000 pool house and a $2,000 garden shed had the same zoning fee. To make this fee fairer, we wanted to increase the accessory structures fee that accounts for the cost of the improvement and would match our other structure improvement fees. We also want a way to promote our roof-mounted solar over ground-mounted solar, as the ground-mounted systems are more problematic with taking space that otherwise could be used for other things, and I will add, such as housing. While the proposed code fee changes for accessory structures, including ground-mounted solar panels, the fee would go up from $100 to $100 plus the $1.50 per 1,000 of improvement, which includes the inspection. With the proposed code fees for roof-mounted solar panels, the fee would go up from $100 plus $150 or $1.50 per 1,000 of improvement to a flat $150, which includes the inspection. With the Solar Smart Platinum designation, we are required to do post-construction inspections of solar. The minor fee will cover city employee costs. And here's the essence of it. This fee change does three things. It encourages roof-mounted solar installation over ground-mounted solar. It collects more revenue for the high-end accessory structures while not over-penalizing the small accessory structure improvements. And finally, covers the post-construction inspection costs that are required by our Solar Smart Platinum designation. So that's what we have before us today. Member Wood.
Member Swank?
Yes.
So in our new order, it's now to the city administration for any comments, and then the public, and then to council.
Okay. You gotta wait. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at President Crowell. We've been working on this Soul Smart Platinum for quite a while, and this is the last piece of the puzzle to qualify for Soul Smart Platinum. We'll be one of the few cities in the nation that have achieved this level under Soul Smart. And just as a little bit of background for anyone who's watching, you know, the whole premise behind Soul Smart is that it allows for municipalities that take on the Soul Smart tenants, and there are bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. You are basically clearing the way of red tape and long bureaucratic processes to have solar in residential as well as business solar, whether it's some business uptown or business anywhere in the city of Athens, but also residential. It also makes it easier for people to access IRA. It makes the Inflation Reduction Act that much more attractive if you're clearing the way for rooftop or roof mount solar, or even, as council some time ago permitted for ground mount within the confines of a residential property. As long as it's fitting within the side setback and rear setback and all the setbacks with bulk controls. So this will really take us that last step in order to have SolSmart Platinum, which isn't just a name, it's that we are stepping up and, actively encouraging more solar in our residential neighborhoods as well as businesses. So it's the right thing to do. And it's a simple fee change at the end of the day.
Thank you. Other members of, or elected officials, I should say. Now members of the public, including council members?
Correct.
All right. Mr. Reisner.
My name is Jeff Reisner. I live at 354 Carroll Road, Athens, Ohio, 45701. I represent myself even though I am a member of City Council. My question is, you mentioned inspection fees after construction.
Yes,
Would these
sir.
be an annual inspection or just one time?
One time, yes, sir.
One time.
Unless there are modifications made to the project, at which time it would have to have a re-inspection.
I see. So if the person that built the solar array on the roof decided that they wanted to expand it over to the garage, that would be a separate project, but that would require an inspection.
It's my understanding. I defer to the mayor on that, though.
Likely.
Okay. Just wanted to clear that up.
Okay. Other members of the public? Members of the committee? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to make sure that I'm reading it right, that this means it'll be $150 for roof mount and $100 plus $1.50 per thousand, not $100 per each thousand.
Right, yes, the 100's the base,
And then it's $1.
$1.50 per thousand of improvement.
Got it.
So if the thing costs $10,000, it'd be what, $15 additional?
Got it.
Yes, sir.
For roof mount, though, it's capped. Residential is capped at 150.
Yeah.
So it can far exceed, in terms of its cost, that amount. Probably not likely the case, but
Of course, that 150 also covers the inspection, so 150 for,
Yeah.
and then 100 plus $1.50 for auxiliary accessory structures and accessory energy systems.
I'm noting the importance of the comma.
Yeah, okay. Other members of council? That concludes the Planning and Development Committee this evening.
Thank you, Member Swank. We will now move. On this issue, Mr. Wasserman?
On a issue of that committee, I was called by the code office and told that my application for a use permit for the right-of-way would be taken up tonight. Actually, it was supposed to be 2 weeks ago, and then they called me and said tonight, but I understand it's been removed from the agenda. Is there a reason?
It was not placed on the agenda.
Well, the code office was incorrect?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a schedule for it to be heard? I filed it, I think, in August.
Yeah, we're waiting to hear from the law director who's been out of the country.
Mayor?
thank you, President Crowell. I'm holding a document that is agenda, Athens City Calendar, Monday, October 28th, 2024, 7 PM, email D. Walker, blah, 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 blah. And it says Planning and Development Committee, special right-of-way use permit and sign. So this is the document that Code Office informed, I'm sure, Mr. Wasserman about, which has, is number one item on here, special right-of-way use permit for sign 22 West Stimson, which I believe is your property.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the additional information. I believe that the attachment to the email that had that document was listed as a draft of the agenda for this evening. So the actual agenda, it does not appear on tonight's agenda. Sorry for the confusion, Mr. Wells. Mr. Swank, is there a date by which you think that this might come before this committee?
The documentation was sent to the law director this morning. As I said, she's been out of the country. Out talking to her, I fully expect it to be back on the agenda, or on the agenda 2 weeks from today, or next, not 2 weeks from today, 2 weeks from tomorrow, the 12th, which would be our next committee meeting.
Mr. Wasserman, does this delay cause any particular problem for your
I
business?
guess not, but I'll be at a state conference on the 12th and I won't be able to appear. But, you know, I don't know. It's pretty boilerplate. Signs all up and down Stimson that are in the same situation. And I did file the application close to 2 months ago.
Yeah, just a little clarity. This is not for the sign. I visited your property, and you're absolutely right. Small sign, no problem. But in doing that, it was discovered that the parking lot also is on the city right away. So what they're looking into at Code and the law director is making just one thing for the sign and the parking lot all at one time, so we don't have to go through it twice.
The parking lot was approved through Title 41, 2012. 12.
One of the issues is that there are actually parking lines extending onto the sidewalk, which in view of recent conversations with disability and all that are some concerns, and we're trying to iron those out. But again, the law director who will give guidance on this has been out of the country.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will now be moving on to the Finance and Personnel Committee. This is chaired by Member Reisner, who is joined by Member Wood, Member Clodfelter, and Member McCary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at tonight's agenda, there's several items under Finance and Personnel Committee, though I understand one of the items that's on that I'm seeing here on my agenda has been struck off, the stop-loss medical insurance 2025 contract, I believe. Mr. Mayor?
That's correct. Both stop loss, there's two. Both stop loss and the health insurance third-party administrator contract.
Okay. Oh. Are there any other corrections to be made? No? Okay. First item is the Outdoor Recreational Council of Appalachia, ORCA agreement. What I have before me, and I believe the members of the committee have gotten, are several ORCA-related emails and a copy of the original ordinance that was introduced by Member Wood, plus what appears to be dues, invoices, so on. So there's, as far as I can tell in all this, there's not actually an agreement within this, what I have here. So is there an ORCA agreement? Anyone?
Member Reisner, your committee, and you can turn to the city administration now if you'd like. I'm not sure. Thank you, Mr.
Wow. Administration?
What I can share with council, and I don't know if you have this information in front of you, but At the most recent Orca board meeting, and in full disclosure, I'm the chair of Orca, Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia. It was brought up to change their fee structure, which, as council is likely aware, and I've mentioned this before, but the fee structure was based on, in 2018, 2019 timeframe, it was based upon Athens, along with Athens County, becoming pay-for-success funders for the Bailey's Trail System. That then, over time, kind of transitioned to the membership rate of being $90,000. At the most recent board meeting, that pay structure, that fee structure was changed significantly to where it's based upon per capita. So it's based upon the population of any member of Orca. So for the city of Athens, our rate went from what was $90,000 down to, I believe it's 24,600 and something, which is the 2024 estimated census for the city of Athens. The way it works is that any member, again, would base their membership would be based upon their population. The county, which has Athens in it and four other members that are paying members or in-kind paying members, those populations get backed out of the county's population. So therefore, so that no one's paying twice. So therefore, for the paying members, Athens, Chansey, Bookdale, York Township, Nelsonville, those populations get backed out of what would be the counties, because the county is, by census, I believe it's 62,000 and something. So subtracting those paying members, and that's what they would pay. But this is a substantial reduction in the membership rate for the city of Athens. It is applicable to this year. So as opposed to us paying the $90,000, which is where we started this conversation back in January or February of this year, it is retro to this year to where we would be paying 24,600 and, correct me if I'm wrong, 60, something like that, whatever.
May I ask the mayor a question? Oh, sorry. Please go ahead, Auditor.
I'm unfamiliar with the rules these days. What do you think, Mr. President?
It's still up to the city administration. I
Okay,
believe the
excuse me.
auditor has some information.
Go ahead, Auditor.
I've heard from the mayor and their agreement, which is, I think, very fair and a good idea. Where we are now, though, and this is based on my conversations with the law director, is 5 years ago, the mayor, on behalf of the city, signed an agreement that laid out the rules for how this was going to happen. And then council approved it with an ordinance that had, it points on there about the only paying if the county paid their share, and that council had to approve our payment every year. So that has happened until this year, when the county decided not to pay. They paid extra money otherwise, so they're not paying the 90,000 this year. And so council passed an ordinance earlier this year saying that we would pay it anyway, but we also needed our general fund cash balance to be in line with our policy. It has not been, it would be at 9% for our, sorry, I'm really tired. Anyway, so it has not been at that, and it still isn't, although it's at 8% now. It's down to about 5%. The threshold in our policy is 7.5%, which is kind of a bare minimum. Our bonding company likes it to be around 12 or 13%, actually. So, so that is an ordinance that's in place now, and as you know, when you pass an ordinance, that's a law. So So Orca has set this all up. They've worked on their bylaws. I think we got a new set of bylaws. We've gotten a new fee structure, as the mayor said. However, we can't make that payment unless council goes back and signs off on a new agreement, which the law director did put out an email. I don't know who all was on it, but it listed things that should be in there, that we need something that, overrides that original agreement. And the same with the ordinance, well, then we need an ordinance to override the ordinance from this year. So that's where we are on that. The payment can't be made, right now until council approves all of that, gets the appropriate paperwork in place.
What I have right here from the law director, dated Thursday, October 17, 2024, the new agreement should, one, state it revokes the prior agreement attached to ordinance 0-11019. State it relieves the city from future financial liability on the prior agreement. Contains the terms of the new agreement as provided by the mayor. An example given is, does the new agreement continue year to year unless terminated pursuant to Section 13 within 90 days prior to withdrawal? The new agreement should be attached to an ordinance amending ordinance 0-11019, and then so on. So that's essentially what we need in order to move on. Is the administration ready with an ordinance like this?
We can move something forward this week for sure.
Okay, so perhaps next week? Good. Okay, let me see now. Now it goes to audience. Okay, hi there, audience. Please state your name and rank and serial number for the record, please.
Alan Swank, 40 Townsend Place. I have a question as a council person. In the bylaws, the new bylaws that Chris Schmiel sent to me, it also mentioned that the original members, which Athens is one, I believe, could also provide in lieu of money, in-kind contributions. How do we work that into this?
Thank you for your comments. We can discuss that amongst the committee as we go forward here. It's an opportunity for the public to make comments. It's not a time for debate. Anybody else? Mr. Reisner, your committee.
Oh, okay. All right, where do I go from here?
Anybody else from the audience?
Anybody
like
else
to
from
think?
the audience?
Now you're on to your usual committee members.
Okay.
You can go
Is
have
there
a discussion
any
with the
member
mayor.
of
Now you're
the
not. Now
committee
you're on.
that would like to chime in. Oh, Member Clodfelder.
I wonder if I might be able to ask the mayor a question?
Yes, you may.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor, if the expected payment of Athens is going from 90,000 to about 24,660, and if other of the paying members will also see their payments go down, and maybe that's not the case, but if that is the case, is Orca going to be all right financially?
It should be. Orca's growing. I'm not going to get into any of the details tonight, but Orca is working with, when I say Orca, I'm talking about the executive director, is working with surrounding counties. So as the name implies, it's the the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, not the Outdoor Recreation Council of Athens.
Right.
So it's slowly growing, and so that's what's going to continue to lend itself to growing capacity for the Orca staff.
Okay.
It's pretty nimble, but it does need more capacity moving forward as it's growing. So things are going to be fine.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I would like to address the comment from Councilmember Swank, because at the end of the day, you guys are council members. You're always council members, so I think it's kind of humorous that you go to the podium and claim to be a citizen. You're a council member. You were voted by the electorate. Anyway, the question that was raised was, the issue of in-kind. The in-kind has been a deep and healthy conversation within Orca, and it is designed for trailhead communities. It's designed for communities that have actual direct touch, oh, is my time up? Actual touch points with the physical trail system unto itself. The village of Chansey, great example. Village of Bookdale, great example. Doneville, or the Doneville Trailhead, which is York Township, another member. Those members, their contribution is in kind. So I will tell you, Chansey's population is about 1,000. Their in-kind contribution is probably tenfold that amount because they maintain the parking lot, the restroom facility, the pump track, which is tangentially a piece of this whole puzzle. And I would say the same for Township Trustee Tim Warren of York Township. They contribute in kind as well to a significant amount for the maintenance and the upkeep of the Doneville Trailhead. And the same holds true in the planning and work that's going into what will be soon the Bookdale Trailhead, which is still a trailhead that's under design with a lot of work, but that is where the in-kind comes from. We're talking about villages where you think our budget tends to be small, and it's not. Our budget's actually pretty robust. But then you look at Chansey and their budget, and again, this was a conversation from years ago in terms of these smaller communities that have small budgets, don't have the money to infuse into with monetary, direct monetary cash going into their membership with Orca instead in kind, and it's monetized. So that's something that anybody can look at, the amount of money that is being monetized in terms of maintenance or activities that are taken on by York Township, Chansey, or Bookdale with the trails. And so that's where that comes from. To the question at hand, how can the city have an in-kind contribution? We don't touch the Baileys. The Baileys' closest trailhead is Chansey, 7 miles away from here. So what would the in-kind contribution be? Some may say, well, if we have search and rescue because someone crashed and burned up on, one of the advanced trails. Well, that's an MOU between all of the EMS first responders to be able to get up and rescue said person. And our personnel, our fire department really kind of leads the way when it comes to technical skills training and extraction training. But that's all part of the MOU, much like our MOU, our ability to respond to structure fires anywhere in the county or surrounding counties, which is what the fire department does.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Member Wood.
More general comment in support of Orca and the great work that has been done with it. Kudos to Jesse and the board, and as mentioned, the Village of Chansey as well. Mayor Renner doing a great job on that. I just wanted to say, sort of on the record as well, somebody was talking about moving to Chansey or to Athens County as an option, specifically Chansey. And the top comments on that Reddit thread were all about how the Baileys has changed that whole community and has added, really helped clean up that park, and that it's gone from someplace that was pretty sketchy to a great community area and a great asset. And I just think that it's an excellent example of what this kind of investment can do. So just wanted to, again, commend all the folks involved in that great work.
Thank you. Member McCary.
Thank you. I was looking for some clarification on how the new agreement might change the payment schedule for dues. So, for instance, it sounds like we would, instead of needing to pay $90,000 during this 2024 calendar year, we'd be looking at closer to $25,000. Is that correct? It would be, yes. Okay. And then when would that next be due again?
next year. That was another change that was made at the Orca board meeting, and it was the time frame in which to pay, and so it was basically within the first quarter of the calendar year. So 90 days within that time frame, because before it read like January 15th is when dues, and I mean, we don't even release the budget until the 16th, 17th, 18th of the new year. That was just poor language that was put into the original agreement
Great. So
slash
it looks like we
bylaws.
have until maybe April 1st or so.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Just on that same subject, I'm interested from the auditor if she is recommending a cash balance portion for this new agreement in order to pay the Orca dues by April 1st each year.
That's up to council, of course, but, yes, I would like to see us make this payment this year, especially since the cost has gone down so much. I think Orca would appreciate that, and we do have the money. We have come up in our cash balance, kind of still hovering at the minimum, but, I would like to see us get that paid this year.
I feel like the,
So that would be a change you would have to make in your revised
right,
ordinance.
that's going to have to be all incorporated, but I'm actually looking at future years. We're going to pay it this year partially because we tied the cash balance to a $90,000 payment. Now that we're looking at $25,000 is a significant reduction. But starting April 1st of 2025, Orca will be looking for that $25,000 payment from the city of Athens by that date. And are we going to be in a situation with our general fund cash balance where, do you have a recommendation as to how that is worded for going forward, or the treasurer, anyone?
It seems like if you remove it, right? In the ordinance.
The cash balance requirement.
It's not that you're going to require it one year and not require it another year, right? So if you would remove that cash balance requirement, when you redo this ordinance for this year, I think it would apply for future years. That it would not apply for future years, is what I mean.
If council is going to continue the practice of approving the payment every year, just like this year, we've had an ordinance every year for that. It would be up to council to put that in there each year or not. I wouldn't commit us one way or another to future years. I'm not sure we're going to be any better off next year for our cash balance and carryover than we are this year. But it doesn't mean you have to tie it to that, but I think you should leave yourselves open for that option every year. That either you're just going to pay it or it's going to be tied to something.
So Member Reisner, as this ordinance and agreement are moved forward through the law director's office, we're going to have to contemplate many different scenarios about how this is done in the future.
I agree.
I'm happy to sit with you and discuss if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. I can already see where I'm disagreeing with the auditor on a couple of things. I'm going to have to find a compromise here. Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up. Okay.
Just to remind council that, the $90,000 did make the membership with Orca the more expensive, the most expensive, if you want to put it that way, or the highest membership rate that we have in the city. With this change, it is not. We have the Athens County Economic Development Council that we pay $60,000 to each year. So this is far less than that. So we're not talking about a huge amount of money. It's something that we have already looked at in terms of our budget for 2025 that council will be taking up in short order. But in being in full agreement with everything that the auditor was saying, we're being extremely mindful about budget, as we have every year, but even more so scrutinizing things as we're looking into the 2025 budget. Because, you know, and Council, you recognize this, that our major expense, if you will, our major cost for the city is personnel. You know, 85% of our general fund goes towards paying all of our people. And we're going to have to really start to explore some things at upcoming city council meetings, is how, while we see an ever increasing cost of living, us keeping up with cost of living when it comes to union contracts, as well as our non-union employees for the city, and keeping them increasing right along with what we're seeing with our unions, that, you know, we're going to have to explore ways in which we continue to see revenue coming in that's appropriate for our employees and all the other function in the city that comes out of the general fund, quite honestly. Memberships fall in there too.
Any other comments from the committee or from the audience on this topic? So next Monday, then, hopefully we'll have an ordinance together. So take care of it then. Next item, appropriations for transfer to medical fund. I have a appropriation request from Leanna Wood. I believe this was also sent to members of the committee. And it lists the various transaction code lines and the amounts that have to be transferred over. We will go to elected officials first. Auditor, do you have anything to say about this?
Not really, unless we want to explain why the medical fund needs these transfers at this point in the year. I know that you know, but we received a large bill for medical costs last January that we hadn't budgeted for, about $300,000, and so we had to go ahead and transfer extra money into the medical fund from each fund that pays into that. The funds with personnel pays into the medical fund. And so the original appropriations aren't enough. We didn't appropriate additional money at the time. So now we're at the point where we have been checking you know, we're 3/4 of the way through the year, and we've checked our reports. And so we have mostly medical transfers, but there are some funds that needed some additional money in other account lines, mainly personnel, but that's why the amounts seem kind of odd, but this is money that needs to be appropriated in these funds to cover their expenses through the end of the year.
Okay. Other members of the administration care to chime in on this? Audience? No? Nothing in the audience? Well, I guess that's back to committee then. Member Clodfelder.
May I ask the auditor a question?
Sure.
Okay. I know, or at least it was my understanding, that at the beginning of 2024, when it was realized that the medical fund had such a big deficit in it, we put money in, and that made the city budget really tight, and we've been watching our spending ever since. If we put in this requested amount of money now, is it going to have the same effect on the city budget of making everything just very, very tight again?
It shouldn't. What we did was we did several things to bolster our medical fund. One was we increased the amount we are transferring from the various funds per employee for their medical coverage, and that went up quite a bit. The thing about that is we make those transfers monthly. We don't do all of that in January. So in January, when we got this big bill, we hadn't probably even made one transfer for the year into the fund from the various funds for their medical costs. We also added an additional small percentage from the tax mix to help bolster that fund. the same thing is true, that comes in monthly, those amounts throughout the year. So in January, we didn't have that. So now the medical fund should be in a more stable shape unless we get another large bill. But it takes time throughout the year for that to build up. Why we don't pay all our bills, people don't pay their mortgage in January based on their annual salary because you don't have it all yet. So that's really what happened in January. So now we've gotten all of these transfers throughout the year, and the medical fund is in pretty stable condition. However, we do recommend that we keep the tax addition in place at least for another year. See where we end up. That's another fund that's supposed to have a certain cash balance of 6 months of operating expenses on hand, which it didn't at the end of last year. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Member McCary, do you have a question? You had that sort of look.
No, I think I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. Member Wood? All right, so ordinance for next week? All righty. Mayor's staffing levels, amend to restructure. So I have here, well, I'll just read it here, a draft of an ordinance. The positions of grant administrator and receptionist removed from the staffing ordinance. The position of executive assistant, mayor, added to the staffing ordinance and placed in pay band 3. The position of executive assistant to service safety director moved from pay band 2 to pay band 4. So I guess we'll go to the administration first. Care to comment?
I do. So I don't know if, this is going way back, so I don't know if council remembers this or not, but we created a grants administrator position. And so the responsibilities of Patricia Whitmer, my chief of staff, and the grants manager for the city, became that, filled that position. Prior to that, she was my executive assistant, but then when we created the grants administrator position, she moved into that and has been doing that since 2018, I believe. She's worked for me since 2016, February of 2016. And so with us migrating the grant responsibilities to the various department heads that have grants that are ongoing, and we also are looking to have an external third-party source manage some of our grants for us, in particular the Armory, which is a very complex project because of the sundry of different funding sources that have gone into that capital stack to renovate the Armory. I share all this with you because Patricia Whitmer is retiring at the end of December. She has been, like I said, my chief of staff since I took office, and has been an amazing chief of staff, has been an amazing grants administrator, has been amazing at managing prevailing wage for all of our projects, which we have to manage, which requires a lot of work. It requires weekly updating of prevailing wage and the projects going on and any changes, so on and so forth. She's done an amazing job. So she's retiring. I'm requesting council take this up and hopefully suspend next Monday for the executive assistant or chief of staff position for me, as well as the executive assistant for the SSD, in particular for my executive assistant, because I need that overlap to drain Patricia Whitmer's brain and put it into the person that I want to bring on as my next chief of staff. The amount of information that, as you can imagine, council, that Patty, her historical knowledge of things going on in my office. She was my first chief of staff. So for her to be able to transfer that information on to the next chief of staff for my office is critical. It's absolutely critical. I need that overlap.
Okay. The members of the administration? Other elected officials? Nope. Go to the audience. Anyone out there? No, I don't see anyone. Members of the committee, questions, comments? Member McCary.
Thank you, Chair Reisner, and thank you, Mayor Patterson, for the thoughtfulness. I highly support this overlap and sometimes worry about the sort of institutional transference of knowledge and memory. So I recognize that this has some budgetary implications, but I think it's well worth it.
I agree. I think that transfer of the institutional memory, well, that's, you can't put a value on it.
Yeah.
Sooner it gets done, the better off we're going to be. So for Monday then. And the reason for the suspension, I guess, would be for the public good. Obviously, if we don't know what we're doing. Yes. Okay. Next item. Well, the big one. 2025 budget appropriations. And I believe members of council received what I believe is the draft of the budget for this year. And I also have a couple of historical budgets from the year 2022 and 2023. I don't know if other members of council got those or not. If not, I apologize. I should have sent them on. But the reason is it just gives a view of how the budget has changed over the past few years and costs rising and so on. So would the administration care to talk about the budget?
Well, what I've provided to council are 3 bar charts as well as the raw data at the very top of your very small
Got a magnifying glass?
yeah, we need a magnifying glass. I can also send this to council in on legal size paper as well to make it a little bit larger for you. But what you have is 3 different graphs. The first graph that you're looking at, which is the one in orange and purple, that is all funds and looking at all revenue that's coming in, which is total revenue. It's the orange bars, as well as the total initial budget, which is what the planned budget was moving forward in the purple bars. I want to point out a couple bars on this graph for council, and I think some of you can likely guess as to why there seems to be some really interesting decreases or increases. I'll point out the year 2020 as well as 2022 in that particular graph. It's also highlighted in your third graph, which is light green and darker green. I refer to it as, which is called the initial other fund budget versus other fund annual revenue. If you recall, in 2020 is when we received our CARES Act funding. And so in the total revenue, it came in as revenue. And it was very prescriptive in 2020 as to what that money could be used for. Across that year, it slowly changed to where by November-ish, we were told you can use CARES Act for safety services, to include the personnel budget for safety services. So in our case, fire and police. I believe it was around 1.5 million total. There was 2 tranches that came in. So that's where you see the 2020 increase in total revenue, because that is counted as revenue coming into the city. In 2022, there were several things that came into play. Some of that was the second tranche of ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan dollars that we received over 2021, 2022 that came into the city, as well as money that came in from bonds for the fire station headquarters. That certainly came into play in 2023, which is another revenue increase, as you can see in these graphs. But there was a number of things going on in 2022 that created this strange anomaly. You'll see that 2025, we're projecting a budget moving forward that is substantially less than 2024's budget. So I want you to note that we are working to tighten things up here in the city. If you move on to the second, the red and pink, I guess, bar graph, which is the initial general fund budget versus general fund annual revenue. The 2020, again, you see that substantial rise in the general fund annual revenue. That was CARES Act as it came in, and that's what, we used it for safety services. So our trend line, if you look at both, actually, if you look at all of them, but I'm going to target mostly the all funds graph or bar chart and the initial and general fund annual revenue. The trend is pretty steady in terms of the increases that we're seeing. We're seeing increases in union contracts. We're seeing increases in our annual non-union compensation packages moving forward, or salary packages. So that again is 85% of the revenue that goes into the general fund. That's what it's going to pay for, is our personnel. The third graph is basically all other funds that come into the city, non-general revenue related. And this is where ARPA, the fire bond proceeds in 2022, you see that rather substantial jump in 2022. That's what that was, is money coming in for the fire station headquarters. The other, so there's a couple parts to this, correct? I believe you have the backside of your graphs before I open this up to any questions. You'll see this is a 2023 snapshot. We haven't closed out 2024, so it's not safe for us to make firm projections off of 2024. But if you look at the total revenue in 2023, it was 62 million plus. You're looking at it, you're probably going, well, look at the revised appropriations and then the actual expenditures. Are we deficit spending? The answer to that is no, because if you drop down and look at the surplus that we carried over was $3.4 million moving forward. So the deficit was really included our fire station headquarters notes, the proceeds from the previous year. So therefore, it appears to be a deficit, but in fact, it's due to the bonds and us paying down the debt. Not the debt, paying for the construction of the fire station headquarters as we move forward in time.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Like drinking from a fire hose, going back to the fire station. Other members of the administration, other elected officials, auditor, treasurer? No? Members of the audience? You know the drill.
Alan Swank, 40 Townsend Place. Mr. Reisner, I appreciate you sending me the 23-24 budgets. It was very, very helpful to look at the increases. From 23 to 24, and the mayor alluded to this personnel cost, from 23 to 24, our personnel costs went up 11.56%. The budget total, and again, I'm talking about the general fund, went up 11.44%. For this year, just to share the efforts that have been made by those who have put this budget together. Instead of an 11.44% increase in the general fund total budget, the increase this year was just 7.41%. And the personnel, instead of being 11.56, dropped to 10.81. The range of the roughly 10 categories, 10 departments, as low as 4.24% increase from from this year to 2025, and as high as 22.87. In fact, I'd like to point out that the mayor's requested budget is the lowest of the bunch, only 4.24%. So obviously, they're doing some things there to contain our cost. But there are two items that jumped out to me, and I think I know the answer, but I'd like to ask it publicly. Fire jumped to 22.87% from this year to next, and the code office jumped to 17.46 from this year to next. That's the personnel line. I'm guessing that's because we're planning on adding people, but I'm not sure. So what can you share with us, Mr. Chairman?
I can't answer that question. I'll have to defer to the administration.
A large portion of that is personnel. We've had some personnel changes in the code office to where Lance Allison is now the assistant director of code, and so that came with a pay increase, but then it also vacates his former position, and so we're budgeting for that position. We have to budget for all positions that are in the staffing ordinance, every position, whether it's filled or not. And so that's been a tool that we have used. Now, in some cases, we absolutely need to fill that position. There's other positions, though, that we are not in critical need of filling, and so that carries forward as well. That's been pretty typical over the past years, to where we don't just run out and fill every staffing position underneath the staffing ordinance. That allows us a bit of a cushion when it comes to carryover moving forward, but we still have to budget for those. But we've made some changes, as I mentioned. It was a pay grade 6, which the starting point is 25.08 cents, $25.08 for the grants administrator, but that position is now gone and will become part of the responsibilities of the department head. So there's going to be, savings with making that change, but that's just one change of several.
Well, that's good, because last year there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the categories where the increase was well above 10%, and this year there's only 2. Every other one is under 10%. So that's a good sign, I think, in terms of budgeting. And again, Mr. Reisner, thank you for providing these figures. It's always nice to be able to lay things side by side from year to year as we consider this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Auditor.
Well, I haven't seen these charts that the mayor and you guys are referring to, but I can give you some information from the deputy auditor about personnel costs for this year. They're high, but there are other costs for that. It's not necessarily an increase in personnel. Over the years, and some of you remember this, we've been receiving rebates from the Bureau of Workers' Comp that has paid our bills every year, and that has dried up. And so this year we budgeted for those payments, which come out of each budget that has personnel, number one. And what else did she say on that? And we did our three-year review on the admin costs and transfers that we make, internal service and admin costs, and those have gone up this year. And those are taken out of the personnel lines in everybody's budget. So aside from annual raises for people, we've had increases in those two areas.
Members of the audience, anybody else? Members of the committee? Member Clodfelder.
Thank you very much for explaining that, Auditor Hecht. In terms of the increases to the personnel budget that we've seen this year because the workers' comp fund dried up and the other factors you were mentioning, do you see those costs continuing in the future?
Well, Yes, for the workers' comp, I do. I do. We actually did really well for a long time and did not have to budget much in the individual departments for those costs for 5 years or more, I'll bet. But yes, I think that will continue the way it had been for my first 15 years in office. As far as the admin costs and the internal service costs, we only do those reviews every 2 or 3 years. So it won't change for a couple of years now, probably unless something really drastic happens. But yeah, and if somebody wants to know what those are, so the internal service costs refer to the IT costs for all the departments, and the vehicle and computer costs that are calculated, and each department that has vehicles or computers pays a percentage based on how many they have. And then the internal admin costs are what departments pay to the general fund for our costs. You, me, the mayor, law director, code office. No, wait, code office pays us. I don't know. I can't remember them all exactly, but there are about 5 funds in the mayor's office that service all the funds. Water, sewer, garbage, recs, parks and rec, and all that. So, so that's the internal admin costs that come out of each department.
Other members of the committee?
Go ahead.
Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair Reisner. I am just wanting to zoom out and ask the mayor for his perceptions of how this revised budget for the upcoming year reflects some of our priorities as we've heard them over the last year from the public, including such things as we've discussed this evening, our commitment to Orca and recreation as part of our comprehensive plan and long-term goals, but also having recently received requests from our Commission on Disabilities for things like more attention to infrastructure repairs that improve accessibility and funding of the small grants program that previously was in place. I was hoping you might be able to begin commenting on that.
Well, let me start with ADA improvements in the city of Athens, and it has been, and I appreciate the question, I really do, because I think this has largely been silent, other than people just recognizing that, hey, there's a new sidewalk on East State Street that happens to be extremely long to where a sidewalk didn't exist before. The city has made a lot of ADA improvements throughout the community, you know, that sidewalk being one of many, many. In 2016, we put a lift here in the city building on the first floor because I recognized right away in all my visits with former Mayor Paul Weil that there's 7 steps that I have to walk up, and that's going to be insurmountable to someone who has mobility issues. And so we, in 2016, put a lift in so that someone can actually visit me in my office as opposed to meeting in the front conference room or elsewhere. So I want to put that out there first and foremost, that there have been numerous improvements. Our former swimming pool is another great example, to where we never had a 0-degree entry swimming facility before. And even then, a lot of the lifts that existed around our former pool were old and inadequate. And so there has been significant changes with just our outdoor recreational spaces. Most recently, for anyone who had the time, I know that President Crowell, thank you for being there for the ribbon cutting ceremony at what I refer to as Southside Park, Dairy Lane Park, Richland Avenue Park, whatever you want to call it. That particular park now has the small tots playground area that it too is ADA accessible because it has a multiple surface, as well as the little shovel digging things that everyone loved. Even me as a grown-up will hop on every once in a while and play with it, but it was not ADA accessible before. And so an individual who had mobility issues as a small 3-year-old, 4-year-old, whatever age, would just stare and watch other people play with it. Now that is ADA accessible for even the digging apparatus for kids to play and do something healthy. The sidewalk that has been put into the Harold Drive connector between West State Street and West Union. Oh, which, by the way, West Union is two-way again, just FYI, like how I wove that in. It's only taken us how long, but oh well. I feel everyone's pain. There's a sidewalk there that allows access between West State and West Union, and in particular to get to the ball fields or down to our recreational spaces. I share all that with council just to point out that my administration hasn't been sitting on its hands when it comes to ADA accessibility and managing a lot of the challenges that we see in front of us. We're not perfect. We have a long, long way to go when it comes to things like that. Council just read an ordinance for the last time and authorized, you suspended the rules on it, thank goodness, and it was for the $1.08 million grant that we received from DOT to do curb ramp repairs or building new curb ramps throughout the city. That's a huge project, and there's going to, you saw the streets that's going to go into, or the streets that have been identified for improvements going on. So that's going to be happening this year. There's other projects, as council is aware, and it is the Uptown Improvements Project. With that project, there will be other things going on, and I'm telling council now, one of the things we are going to be doing is finally correcting the intersection of Court and Union to make it ADA accessible. It has to be the most cost-effective way to deal with that intersection to make it ADA accessible is for us to do a concrete pour that is the diagonal crossings just within the white striping and the east-west, north-south crossings at that intersection to where everything is feathered into the curb ramp so that we don't have to manage the compression of bricks up against concrete, which forever and a day, when you look at the load of traffic up there and you look at the semis that are delivering product up on Court Street these days, when they are making that turning movement on from Union onto Court Street or just continuing down Court Street, it puts a lot of lateral pressures on those bricks and it constantly pushes them down, which if you think about it at the end of the day, if we were to go out and elevate those bricks, every year or every other year, the amount of money that's going to have to go into doing that versus us getting a poured concrete sidewalk in that area, still leaving the bricks in the little triangle areas around this thing, it's the right thing to do. And for anyone who's seen it, and I think most of you have, the crosswalk that goes from the parking garage over here, that was Mayor Sarah Hendricker back in the day, and I love it. Clerk Walker, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I won't go into any details. There's an interesting story. If you ever want to know, come see me after our council meeting tonight and I will share that story. Some of it may be accurate, some may not. It's just information that was passed down. However, my point being is that is stamped concrete to look like bricks, and it looks like bricks. A lot of people don't even notice. Another area in the city where we have stamped brick concrete is up at the Carpenter and Court Street, to where that has stamped concrete as well. Unfortunately, the color of that is a little bit weird, but whatever. It is what it is. So that's an ADA improvement that we're looking at moving forward. Audible crosswalks is critical as well, and that'll be part of the Uptown Improvement Project as we're looking forward in time. I've ceded my time. I've gone on too long. I just wanted to make sure that for those who are watching tonight, that they hear that from my administration, that we have put in a lot of work and a lot of effort since I took office in 2016. And again, we're not letting up. We're going to continue to make the improvements moving forward in time, to include getting the transition plan. That is something that our new city planner, Megan Jennings, is taking up, which our former city planner, Paul Logue, had been working on it. As hopefully people understand, there was a delay in it moving forward. And so now it is being taken up and continuing to move forward to where we have a transition plan in place because we need that transition plan for the city of Athens. So, you know, we're still doing everything that we need to do to make sure that we are as best an accessible community as we can possibly be. There's a new sidewalk now that has been paved just recently, asphalt paved, down on West Union. For anyone who's driven down West Union, now that it's, oh, did I say it's two-way now? With it being two-way, if you look over on the Restore side of West Union, that asphalt sidewalk has been poured in place, which is a shared use sidewalk, both bicycles and pedestrian passage, because of the narrow nature of West Union along there, and wanting to save the sycamore trees that are down in that vicinity as well.
That's very helpful information. I hope the community appreciates it as much as I do. Just wanted to ask the clarifying question about the grant for supporting businesses at a match rate. Should we expect to see that in the budget as it moves forward?
What council will see is I have budgeted, as I typically do, more than any other board or commission for the Commission on Disabilities. And the commission can decide what they choose to do with the money that we put in. But, you know, there's a rather interesting event, a great event that's coming up within the next week. And that is the Athena Award, which we have budgeted for that as well. So the budget that we put forward for boards and commissions that, such as the Athens Municipal Arts Commission, the Commission on Disabilities, you know, I've budgeted for them. They can decide what to do with that funding as they see fit.
Thank you.
Member Klotfelder.
I have a question for the auditor, if I may. I had asked the treasurer earlier, and he referred me to you. On the budgetary information that we got, there were two items, the sewer plant fund and the water plant fund, that had an extra column at the end with significantly larger numbers. One was in the $5 million range, and one was in the $4 million range. And that column just wasn't labeled. So I was curious what those dollar amounts refer to.
Oh, this is, yeah, not the spreadsheet. Well, it's technically a spreadsheet. Yeah, that's the total for the three areas of the plants. So you have maintenance, plant, and administration.
Okay, so one
So
is
each of them
everything
has
for sewer
three,
and everything for water?
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
the combination. It's the same pot of money, but this splits it out so you can see how much we spend on those different areas.
Okay,
And of course, the plants are the most expensive.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll be really brief. Auditor mentioned something a minute ago, which I think it needs a little bit, I'd like to expand on it a little bit, not being under other admin or internal services. You know, when you think about every vehicle in the city of Athens, whether that the city owns, so all of our city fleet, the vehicles that are down at Arts, Parks, and Recreation, or vehicles that are at the code office, or vehicles, even the vehicle that's up here, or the vehicle the custodians use, they all are maintained by our mechanics down at the service garage. So that can be filters, it could be new tires, it could be whatever is just routine maintenance that has to take place in those vehicles. They are the ones who maintain our vehicles for us. And so, to Kathy's point, everyone pays in for services rendered out of that. It goes into a singular point of sale, if you will. But you know, everyone has to pay into that, so it's critical. And I want to give a great shout out to our mechanics, because they're the ones who keep our fleet running. And we've got some pretty old vehicles still in fleet. And so they know those vehicles inside and out. But I'm just giving them a shout out. They do great work, but that's part of internal services, much like IT, as Kathy mentioned.
Can I make a comment?
Okay.
I just want to say this isn't anything about that. I keep saying that I haven't seen that and I hadn't seen that. I was at the OML conference last week, Wednesday through Friday, so that's part of the reason. I don't think everybody's excluding me on purpose or anything like that.
Darn, she found out. Okay, have we, is the budget ready to present to council for approval?
No.
Okay, well, that was short and sweet.
No, this is just to give council an idea as to what the planning is at this point in time. And so
Okay.
you can see historically and looking into 2025 what the budget will be. Still working on the final touches on the budget. It will come up again in committee at the, what is it, the 11th or the 13th, whatever your next committee meeting is. 12th, thank you. I was all around it. But you will be taking that up.
Okay. I was hoping, but you know.
We're watching your timeline.
Okay, next item, the 2025 non-union compensation. I decided to print out an overview of it this morning, and somehow I hit the print, and it just continued to print for the next 3 hours, so there's a lot of stuff here. You want to go line by line, or just give us a nice summary of it?
Well, I can give you the Cliff Note version, only because this too will be coming up in your next committee meeting to where you go through it with a fine tooth comb, but
I was afraid of that.
I don't think it makes sense for me to go through and read through line item by line item, but
No.
most of the
Mr. Mayor,
changes that you're
just
gonna see.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Reisner, you're looking at the non-union benefits package. We're discussing the non-union compensation at the moment.
Okay,
Get to that in a minute.
sorry about that. Well, the only thing I have for the non-union compensation, what? That one, I don't have that one. Certainly not in color. Oh, yes, thank you. Well, let's start over again. Would you care to talk about non-union compensation?
I apologize, Councilmember Reisner, I'm not laughing at you, I'm hopefully laughing with you. This too will come up in much more detail on the 12th of November in committee.
Okay.
It's still being worked on to put the final touches on the non-union compensation as well as the non-union benefits package.
Okay. Audience, anything? Elected officials? No?
I don't have that one either, if that makes you feel any better.
Well, actually it does, you know, it's nice to know I'm not the only ignorant person sitting here, so.
Thanks.
You understand what ignorance means, don't you? It means lack of knowledge, not that you don't know how to process it.
Yeah, okay.
Members of the committee, anything about the non-union compensation that you have any questions on? Knowing that compensation means money, and other benefits, yeah. Member Wood, anything?
No, thank you, Professor Reisner. I also haven't gotten any of these emails, so it'd be nice to see them before.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen them?
No.
Okay, great.
Oh. Interesting.
I thought I saw it listed to everyone on the committee.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, well, a mystery. All right, so essentially for 2025 non-union compensation and non-union benefits, that's be presented in more detail next week. So, good. Well, took care of that. And since health insurance, third-party admin, and stop-loss has been struck off, that leaves us only with the 2025 Public Defender 2025 contract, which I do believe we have here somewhere. Yes, we do. And it's quite detailed, going all the way back from 2008. Administration, care to talk about it?
I apologize, Councilman Rising. This is the public defender contract?
Yes.
I have not seen that. I'm hoping that council has seen it, because I was at OML as well. No. I was, but I'm not gonna feign it upon that.
Okay, well, that's a brief conversation.
This is a renewal, or not a renewal.
Yeah.
I mean, we go through this process with the public defender contract every year.
Yeah.
So this is nothing out of the ordinary. Auditor, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this amount tends to fluctuate in terms of the contract. I see the clerk Walker is passing that out to everybody.
Yes. What I've been handed here is the first half, Jan to June, we know will be $49,877.52. If it stays the same, then $100,000 will be fine. If it increases like it did this year, we may need more, but there's no way to know until late summer. To be safe, maybe $110,000 or $120,000. It was from Patty Whitmer. So that sounds about right.
It does to me.
Yeah.
Again, this is one of those things where we're just estimating going into the next calendar year,
Right.
our fiscal year.
What we're talking about, though, is our municipal court.
Huh?
And the fact that we have a municipal court here in the city, and you think, well, okay, that's for city crimes and so on. No, it's not. It's also for other county-wide crimes that have been committed, but don't go to the Court of Common Pleas. So even though they're county, they're tried here. And consequently, we split the cost somewhat 50-50 with the county. Is that about right, Auditor? Something like that. So we have to do it. Yeah. Auditor.
On the other side of that coin is the county tries the felony violations for the city. But the thing about this contract is their budget is based on what they get from the state. And of course, the state's budget goes, July 1st through June. So that's why Patty's note says that come midsummer, they might need more money or whatever, and they'll ask us for it. But around $100,000 for the year is about right.
Well, Member McCary.
Thank you, Chair Reisner. I was really just looking for some clarification on the public defender contract spreadsheet that indicates no legislation required for 2024 when we're under a threshold of $75,000. And just seeking clarification on, does that mean we don't need a contract for the coming year?
If what the,
We will need one because it will be more than
yeah,
75,000.
maybe 120,000.
Thank you.
So crime pays, I guess.
Okay.
Someone has to pay for it. Looks like it's us. Way it works. Let's see, where are we in terms of protocol? We've talked to the administration. We've looked at the audience with enthusiasm and other elected officials. And we've talked with members of the committee. You're the only one left. Anything to say? No? Well, that's all I have. I believe this committee is adjourned.
Thank you. Council is adjourned for this evening.